Our General Code of Regulations, 7th edition, April 1st, 2015, movement of trains and engines. Repeat instruction. Employee who verbally agrees with the instruction information about the train and engine movement must repeat them. Initiating movement. Before initiating movement, the main track control site and crew member must receive track bulletins affecting their movement, determine the train dispatch yard master if the track bulletins are needed. Train location maintenance the ways of employees who receive the authority to occupy the main track after the arrival of the train. The file of the train must ascertain if the train's location one of the following method: visual identification of the train, direct communication with the crew member of the train, with the receiving the information about the train with the train dispatch control operator. Main track authorization: do not apply main track unless authorized by one of the following: yard limits, restricted limits, block registry, territory, movement of current traffic permits, authorizations, CTC and track warrant controls, entering track warrant controls, movement against current of traffic, authorizing movement against current of traffic, protection when tracks removed from service authority, enter the DTC limited annual interlocution verbal authority control operator control signal that indicates the speed. Speed instruction in general order would have unable to attain authority and necessary follow occupy with the main tracks, and the ABS protection must provide with the absolute block system. Such protection must be provided with the directions outlined in Rule 917.1 signal of the absolute block signal. Lining switches authorities if no longer in effect must retain until the end of the tour of the duty unless otherwise instructed with the train dispatcher. Joint authority: the train employee receive the authority to join with the employee with the train. The employee must not occupy overlapping limits and live with the warrant limit is described with the permission to receive the inter-overlapping limits from the employees listed in the authority. Advice to receive the train dispatch control operative if the employee has reported clear of the limits. Train coordination provided for the men and equipment. You with the train authority with establishing working limits. The employee must contact with the train engineer if there was. You with the train coordination to establish working limits. The train must be in view at stop. The employee in charge of the working limits will communicate with the engineer, will notify the crew member the working limits are to be established. Engineer will make the movements only as permitted with the employee in the charge until the working limits have been relieved to the engineer. Train will not relieve the authority with limits until those working limits have been released by the employee in the charge. Establishing working limits. Working limits may be established with the train authority. Limits as follows: the DTC and track warranting territory will have having authority to either move in either direction that is not in joint, or with having authority to move in one direction only. Working limits must not be established behind the train more than one block of the train beyond any location of the train, and could be into the track between the employee and the charge of the working limits of the train. 915 track permit: with the train having only track permit authority within the limits. Rule 914, current traffic. The traffic having the authority to move the current traffic, the working limits must not be established behind the train with more than one block in advance of the train, with beyond any location of the train with the engine could enter the track between the employee in charge of the working limits in the train. Controlled traffic. CTC. When train having track and time authority has not enjoined, when the train having authority to move in one direction, the working limits must be established behind the train more than one block in advance of the train beyond any location that the train engine could enter the track between the employee in charge of the working limits of the train. Reverse movement: the reverse movement any of the main track controlling siding any other track with the block system is in effect with the restricted speed only with the limits of the train has the authority to occupy. Authorized direction, reverse and restricted speed, permission of reverse movement. Obtain permission from the train dispatcher for the control operator before making a reverse movement unless the movement is in the same single block with the train engine. The drive of the working limits have been established behind their train. Obtain the permission from the employee in charge of making a reverse movement including within the same single block. Movements within control points or interlocking control points with manual interlocking shift within the track and time limits move them to stop while the trailing edges between the outer opposing absolute signal the control point with the manual interlock with the movement that must not change the direction without permission of the control operator. Automatic interlockings of the movement that may change the direction with the limits of the interlocking continuously occupies at least one car length of the lengths. Shoving movements. The equipment must not be shoved until the engineer and the employee protecting the movement have been completed with the job briefing and concerned with how the protection will be provided. Employees must be in position provide with the visual protection of the equipment being shoved that must not engage with the unrelated task while providing protection. Equipment must not be shoved until it is visually determined that the portion of the track can be used to clear of the equipment with conflicting movement. If the track will remain clear with the location where movement will be stopped. Switching derails are properly lined. Employees may be relieved of the provided visual protection when the local instructions specify the tracks involved with the shoving. How shoving the movement will be protected, such as shove with the light and monitored cameras. track has been pulled an equivalent amount with the less of the car's equipment will be immediately shoved back on the track. If the track has been remained clear of the location where the movement it will be stopped immediately before shove. The movement is made with the adjacent the track, provided the employee with the ability to visually determine the track to be shoved and clear if the route is properly lined. Authority of the main track controlling siding allowing the movement of the direction show the provided route is proper lane. The road crossing will be not found movement if the restricted speed is not required. Making backup movement according to the Rule 6.6. Backing up movement, shoving the movements over the road crossings must be made in accordance with Rule 632. 1. Providing warning over road crossing speeds when shoving. Warning when cars are shoved with the main track control siding of the direction authorized movement that must not exceed 20 miles an hour. Freight train 30% maximum passenger train. Maximum timetable speed with the snow service unless the employee within train charge authorizes higher speed. Remote control movements over the consider the shoving movements. Example: the remote control operator controlling the movement right with the leading engine with the direction of the movement. If the initial movement of the remote control operator, the crew member must be in position to visually observe the direction the employee equipment moves. With the remote control zone that is equipped with the pullback and the stop protection, the operator must verify the pullback and stop protection's operation. Pullback and stop protection must again be verified that the PSP is an overriding of the remote relief of the providing protection. Remote control operators relieve of the providing protection requirement to stop with half of the range of the vision with the movements of the engine leading and end. Remote control zone has been activated. Switch derails are known, but then properly lined tracks for the zone are known to be clear of the trains for the engine, railroad cars, and men of the equipment following track. And note that they must be repeated each time the during the remote control zone is activated. Backup movements obtaining the permission of the train dispatcher. The train may back up with any main track with any of the track with the CTC ineffectively under the following condition. Train dispatcher must verify the following and assume the overlapping limit of the authority is not effective unless the conflicting movements are protected. Track bulletin form B is not in effect with the main track that is not removed with the service of the track bulletin. Permission to leave the switch in the reverse position has not been granted. Crew ensure the movement will not exceed the limits of the train's authority, exceeds of the train's length. Enter, follow private public crossing, except as provided in Rule 632. 1. Provided warning over road crossing, made into warn within yard limits, restricted limited for the interlocking limited drawbridge, railroad crossing at the grade of the track bulletin form B. Where the movement is made with under the condition of the restricted speed does not apply with the trains backing up under the provision of the rule pass of the signal indicating stop proceed without stopping. Alright, your remote control zone. When entering the remote control zone, before entering the remote control zone, all employees, whether they are not part of the remote control crew, must determine whether the zone is activated. The employee must retrieve the information from the remote control operator for the unauthorized employee with a special instruction. When the remote control zone is activated, the zone must not be fouled with equipment of the occupied switch operator until the remote control zone has been deactivated. Person with the green with the remote control operator to enter the remote control zone. Protection must be provided while the other employees are in remote control zone. The remote control operator must know that the track is clear when the switches are properly lined after the other employees are clear of the remote control zone. Transfer of the active remote control zone. Active remote control zone may be transferred to the other remote control operator. Job briefing must be conducted each time the time zone is transferred between the remote control operators if applicable the other authorized employee. Deactivation of the remote control zone. When the remote control operator ends of the tour of the duty of the remote control zone must be deactivated except for the remote control zone must remain in effect if the transferred special instructions specify the hours of the remote control is active. Stop clearing with a meeting of the passing. The train must meet with the pass of the stop at least 400 feet with the signal clearance point over the trace facing point switch of the other train where it will pass over the length of the train permits. Show the diagram 400 feet. Meeting or passing precaution. Train required to take the side of the must clear the switch unless the switch is properly line to leave the main track with the train standing on the main track to meet the opposing train must, if possible, line the switch for the opposing train to leave the main track. However, the automatic block system do not line the switch unless the opposing train has entered the block in advance. Instruction of the clear of the following of the train. The train dispatcher instruct for the train with the blocking system limit the clear of the following of the train. The train must be in the clear before the following of the train could receive the restrictive signal indication to determine the location of the following train with the radio or other means of communication. Alright, mandatory directives are written, printed, displayed. Authority of speed restriction issued by the train dispatcher control operator. Mandatory directive track 1, track bulletin. DTC authority track time, track permits, radio speed restriction. Mandatory directive restricting the train movement will not be issued near a point where the restriction apply until the engineer conductor confirms that the train comply with these restrictions. Indicate void on the mandatory directive form when the employee reports clear of the authority limit. As mandatory directive is made, the void of the crew must maintain mandatory directives on the continuous tour of order. FRA accepted track. Accepted track. On the track says the FRA accepted tab of the following will go for the maximum speed of not exceeding 10 miles an hour. No occupied passenger train will be operated. No movement of the will be operated to tangle with more than 5 cars black card according to the hazard material regulation. Alright, yard limits with the train with the engine for the authorized with the U of the main track with the not protecting against the other train with the engine must give the way as soon as possible. The train is approached. Engine must keep the post as arrival. The passengers must not delay them. All movements entering and moving the yard limits must be made with a restricted speed unless the operating under the block system indicates them more favorable than approach. Show the diagram A with the yard limit on single restricted speed limits in the yard. Upon observer, they have to get advanced knowledge of the block system may require restricted due to the yard limit. If entering within the yard limits of movement must be restricted speed of the block signal as soon as possible thereafter, consistent with good train handling. Clear and approach in yard limit is restricted speeds. Flashing yellow light, yellow yard lights approach and restricted speeds. Yard limits remain in effect continuously unless they are specified with a special instruction from the track bulletin. Again, for the current of the traffic that moves, again for the current traffic that must not be made unless the authorized protected by the track warrant, track bulletin, yard master, authorized employee. Your CTC tracks are with yard limit is effect for the CTC of the control operator must authorize the movement out of the main track of the reverse movement of the same block with maybe made outline of Rule 641 permission of the reverse movements. In track permit territory, yard limits effect with the Rule 915 track permit territory. All movement must receive the permission of the control operative into the main track with the crossover of the one main track with another as filed with the control signal display with the proceed indication track permit is issued. Verbal permission is granted with the track is in effect. Rule 917 entering the main track at the hand operated spring switch applies. Restricted limits with restricted limit the train and engine for the authorized is due to the main track with the protecting against the other train engines. All movements must be restricted speed with the movements against for the current of the track must not be made unless authorized protected by the track warrant, track bulletin, yard master, or other authorized employee. Alright, your BRT, their block registry territory. Block registry designated the special instruction registered block registered territory will apply only to designated territory training employee with charge of the man with equipment is authorized to occupy the block registered territory under the following condition. Following information in the register on the first blank of the train gang equation. A. Conductor employee on the charge of the men. B. C. Date, time, and equipment occupied. D. Territory cleared. E. A. With the enter of the train and the gang equipment identification. B. Enter the last name of the conductor employee on the charge of the men of the train. C. The enter the date. And D. Enter the time of entry was made in the register. E. Enter the time of the territory was cleared, then draw the line through the entire entry. The required exit entry must be completed with any authorized employee. If register indicated the territory occupied entry cannot be made with the register until the employee charged of the engineer each of the preceding entry has been contacted. The territory is unoccupied. Movements must be made in a restricted area. Approaching railroad crossing drawbridge is the end of the multiple main track. Train engines must be prepared to stop when they approach for the railroad crossing at the grade of the drawbridge at the end of the multiple unit main track, but unless these areas are protected with block and interlocking signals. Protected by stop signal. The stop signal to protect these areas of the train must stop before any part of the train. The engine passes the stop sign, and the train cannot proceed until the route is clear with the drawbridge position permits movement. Should stop railroad crossing of the grade and drawbridge. Diagram A. Protected by the gate, and the gate is lined again for the intent of the route. The train engine must stay with the stop and remain at least 50 feet. From the following with the track conflicting with the route with the gate that's chained with its stop position on conflicting with the route when required, restore the gate to its normal position after the movement is complete. Obscured view of the conflicting route. The train must stop before entering the railroad crossing with a great view of the conflicting route. With observe the obscured, and a crew member must go ahead with the train signal from the crossing when it is safe to proceed. In this obscured view, switch at the joints, junctions, normal position, junction switches, throw movement of the main track where the junction is an immediate station. Show the CLOI best Anna switch line, throw movement, best is intermediate station. Stop clear crossing junctions and railroad crossing junction. Training engine must not stop if possible where they could interfere with the train moving on the other track. Flag protection not required. Flag protection is not required against the following trains on the same track. If the automatic block signal system limits the rear of the train, protect with at least 2 block signals, one or more, one block signal, one distance signal. Rear of the train within the block registered territory, CTC, DTC, or train warranting control interlocking limits. 3. General order, special instructions specify the flag protection is not required. Flag protection is required. Flag protection required against the following trains. More than flag protection required against the following foot train with more than half the maximum timetable speed with the trains moving on the main track at more than half the maximum authorized timetable speed with the in train with at the location train may overtake with the following train, and flagman must decide whether a drop light fuse is considered the following: grade of the track, curvature of the track, weather conditions, slight distance, speed of the train relative to the following distance. Following train, less than half of the maximum timetable speed when the train is moving on the main track, at least half of the maximum authorized time speed for the aim of the train at a location. Flagman must provide flagman protection. Give the following trains on the same track, the flagman must drop off the single lighted fuse at close enough of the intervals to ensure the full protection, not exceed the burning time of the fuses. Less than half of the maximal time period stopped on the main track. When the train stops on the main track, flagman must immediately go back to at least 1 mile. The flagman must remain there until the stopping of the following of the train until recalled. If the flagman is recalled, the safety will permit the flagman must leave the lighted fuse and return the train with the recall before reaching the prescribed distance. The flagman must leave the lighted fuse while returning the train. The flagman must also place signal lighted fuse at the interval shorter than the burning time of the fuse. When the train departs, the crew member must leave one lighted fuse in addition until the train is moving at least half the maximum authorized timetable speed of any of the train at the location. The crew member must drop off single lighted fuse in intervals shorter than the burning time of the fuse. Alright, equipment left on the main track. Portion of the train left on the main track. The necessary to leave the portion of the train temporarily on the main track. Follow this procedure. Set the sufficient number of handbrakes to keep the detached portion of the movement and provide the protection. Give the movement as demands for the main track with the train detached portion returning front of the portion left of the train. Dispatch virtually leaves the protection. Return movement or the return movement is authorized. Make return movement at restricted speed. However, the engine without cars may return at a higher speed with a governed block signal indication. Other equipment left on the main track. Crews have to leave equipment of the main track. Do not provide protection of the equipment if the train dispatcher gives a verbal relief. Train dispatcher may request a crew or report clear with the authority to leave the equipment on the main track. The crews have to leave the equipment of the main track. They do not need to provide protection when the equipment of the train dispatcher provides relief. Train dispatcher must provide with the protection for the equipment. All crews that leave the main track at the point must be notified with the equipment. The location must move with the restricted speed with approaching at the location. Alright, precautions against the unusual conditions. Protect train with engines against any known condition that may interfere with their safety. With the conditions, restrict visibility, regulate the speed. Ensure the crew members can observe and comply with the signal indication. Usually a heavy rainstorm and a high water train with the engine must approach bridges, culverts, and other control hazard points prepared to stop. If cannot proceed safely, they must stop until the safety resume movement. Should the range procedure to stop the ridge and culvert, resume movement when safe. Provide the train dispatcher such condition visual available means of communication. Protection against defects and the defective condition that might have caused the accident of the discover the track of the bridge of the culvert. If any of the crew member will leave with the train or the engine has passed over the dangerous defect, the crew member must immediately notify the train dispatcher to provide protection if necessary. Water above the rails. Do not operate with the train engine over the track submerged in water until the track has been inspected and verified as safe. Operate engines at 5 miles an hour. Lift the water is above the top of the rail. Water is more than 3 inches above the top of the rail. Mechanical department supervisor must authorize the movement. Track obstruction, unusual condition. When the train is divided, the words between location and location be governed by the rule 621.3. When the specified limit of the train must be moved as directed in special instruction. 622. Maintaining control of the train over engine. Crew members must consider the train engine speed with the grade condition, air gauge indication. Determine the train and engine being handled safely and is under control with the necessary. Take immediately action. Bring the train and the engine under control. 623. Emergency stop, severe slack action. The train engine stop with emergency application of the brake with a severe slack action occur while stopping and taking the following actions. Obstruction of the main track control siding. The adjacent main track with the controlled siding may be obstructed immediately. Warn other train by radio starting exit location staff of the train and repeat as necessary. The place light fuse on the adjacent track. Notify the train dispatcher control operator when possible. Foreign lines railroad if necessary. Warning of the other movements if it's no longer necessary. If it is known adjacent track are not obstructed. Train dispatcher control operator revive with the crew protection is provided on the adjacent track. Inspection of the car and units. All car units equipment of the track must be inspected as outlined in special instruction, air brake, and train handling rules. Alright, train on adjacent track. Train on adjacent track to that receive the radio notification must pass location specify the restricted speed of the short stop short of the aim of the portion stop train with the following with their track with the track that is clear within a safe proceed with the restriction no longer applies. 624. Movement on double track. On double track tracks may keep the right unless otherwise restricted. Movement again for the current over the traffic. Movement again for the current traffic must authorize with the track bulletin, track warning, except as provided in the yard limits. Restricted limit the track permanent signal protection, automatic block system, and lighting switch. Authorized enter DTC. Limits. Movements approach the block and interlocking signal prepared to stop the length of the engine signal indicated with the perceived when facing point. Movement will be made over the spring switch. Comply with Rule 891 testing spring switch. Use the multiple main tracks. Multiple main tracks designated with the name and the number of the necessary with the track indicated in the special instruction. 627. The movement of restricted speed. When required to move the restricted speed, movement must be made at a speed that allows the stopping within the half of the range of vision short of the train, engine, railroad car, men of the equipment following the track stop sign, derail switch aligned, and properly trained engine required to move the restricted speed of the crew must keep the lockout with a broken rail with not exceed 20 miles an hour. Apply these requirements over the leading of the wheels or reach for the point where the movement is restricted no longer required. Movement on the other main track. The equipment is moving on the main track or other track where a block system is in effect with the train. Their engines must move at a speed that allows them to stop at the half of the range of the vision short of the terrain, engine, railroad car, main equipment following stop signal, or derail switch line improperly. Sightings assigned direction. Do not use sightings of the assigned direction in an opposite direction unless the otherwise by train dispatcher. Stop and clearing signal when possible. The train engine for the sighting must not stop until the engine train is clear of the main track. Cars equipped left on the sighting. Avoid leaving cars and equipment on sightings unless authorized by train dispatcher, except in the emergency when indicated to notify the train dispatcher immediately. Inspect the trains. Inspecting the passing train with the employees must inspect with the passing train with the detect any of the following conditions. They must notify the crew members of the passing train with any available means of the overhead journals, sticking brakes, sliding wheels, wheels not properly positioned on the rail, dragging equipment, insecure contents, signs of smoke of a fire, headlight marker improperly displayed, any of the dangerous conditions when possible. Employees inspect with the passing train must advise the crew members of the condition of the train. When possible, crew member on the edge of the train being inspected must notify the crew member of the rear of the train when the train is being inspected by other employees. Alright, ground inspection. When the train is stopped with a meet with a passenger with another train, the crew member must inspect with the passing train with the train. Man's inspection must be made with the ground. If there is a safe location, if so, to do so, the train must cross the track and inspect the side of the passing train opposite with the stop train. Trackside warning detectors inspection. Crew members must be aware of the trackside warning detector signals from the person inspecting their train. Stop train immediately for an inspection when any of the following conditions exist. A crew member receives the top signal trackside warning detector indicate the train in fact. Crew member is notified of the dangerous condition. Movement must not proceed until it is safe. Train inspection by crew members. When walking, the inspection of the train is required with physical characteristics to prevent the completion of the train inspection. Inspect such of the train as possible. The train may be moved but not exceed 5 miles an hour. The distance necessary to complete with the inspection train is moved with the crew members of the must inspect with the frequently look for the identification of the defect of the train, especially with a round curve. The inspection of their train crew members must observe the train closely for any of the following: overheated journals, sticking brakes, sliding wheels were not properly positioned on the rail, dragging equipment, insecure contents, signs of smoke and fire, any other dangerous condition. Crew members who discover the defects while training is moved. They must stop the train promptly with the correct any of the defects. If possible, the defect of the car must be set out, but they must not attempt to move the car to the set out points unless it is safe to do so. When the car is set out because of the overheated journal, any of the fire may be complete with an extinguished, and precautions may be taken to prevent further ignition. Her receiving discharged passengers, passenger crew responsibly approaching the station, receive the discharged passenger to determine if the train is routed on the nearest track near the station platform and other conditions could pass the main track with a controlled sliding between passenger train and station platform. Communication from the train dispatch determine whether any of the trains are approaching between the train and train station platform. Do not make station stops until assured that the train will not pass between the train and the station platform. If unable to communicate with the train dispatch, the train stop may be made after the crew determines if the nose trains with the approach on the track between the train with the station platform before making the change to stop. Conductor must assign the crew members responsible to ensure the proper passenger safety. If during the station stop at the scene the heard and approach, the crew members must take immediately action to keep the passenger for the following effect of the track. Alright, respond of the approaching movements from the notified of the passenger train will be in the station and do not pass between the station platform and a passenger train until the sure that all passengers and employees have been clear of the track between the passenger train and the station platform. Movement may then pass when they perceived by an employee walking ahead of the movement. On other main track move of the movement, it must not pass between the passenger train and the station platform being used unless the safeguards are provided. Alright, maximum authorized speed. All crew members are responsible for knowing not exceed the maximum authorized speed for the train when the passenger's speed is applicable to only the train with existing entirely with the passenger equipment. When passable, a crew member must promptly notify the train dispatcher any condition that will delay or prevent the train from making the usual speed. Permanent speed restriction must not be exceeded until the rear of the train cleared the limits of the restriction unless otherwise specified. Alright, road crossing. Provide warning over road crossing. When cars are shoved and kicked and the gravity switch of the move is made over the road crossing of the grave, the employee must move on the ground on crossing to provide warning until the crossing is occupied. Make any movement over the crossing only when the employee's signal warning is not required, but the crossing is equipped when the gates that are fully lowered position. Flashing lights path of the warning device when it's clearly seen that no traffic can stop at the cross of the approach of the crossing. Lead end of the shoved movements must not exceed 15 miles an hour over the crossing. Automatic warning devices. Under the following condition, the movement must not follow the crossing equipped with the automatic warning device until the device has been operating long enough to provide warning crossing of the gate. If equipped with the fully lowered movements at the top of the 3,000 feet with the crossing movements within 3,000 feet with the crossing speed that has been increased by more than 5 miles an hour. Movements closely following another movement is on the other main track or siding, and movement into the main track with the siding within 3,000 feet of the crossing. Employees must reserve all automatic warning devices before any of that or malfunction of the train. Dispatch or proper authority with first available the means of the communication and only all affected trains as soon as possible. Automatic warning device malfunction. Usually the following table to properly complete the movement of the other crossing movement that notified with the automatic warning device has an activation failure to disable the malfunction. If the crew notified with the crossing warning system has activation failure, if the crossing warning system has been disabled, the Unequip Flaggers do not of the crossing to provide a warning, then stop before the occupying crossing after the crew member of the ground crossing the warning highway traffic and proceed over the crossing as directed by the crew member, then proceed at the normal speed. Crews notify the crossing warning system malfunction and the Unequip Flagger is not at the crossing to provide the warning stop before occupying crossing. After a crew member is on the ground at the crossing warning, the highway traffic proceed over the crossing as directed by that crew member. If the device is seen to be working, instruct the train dispatcher proper authority proceed with the caution over the crossing at 15 miles an hour without stopping until the head end of the train completes, occupies, and crosses, then proceed at normal speed. Crew member communicates with the flagger before and following the crossing. The receive the confirmed information when the warning is being provided. At least one equipped flagger who is unable to provide a warning in all directions of approaching traffic proceed over the crossing at 15 miles an hour without stopping until the head end of the train is completely occupied with the crossing, then proceed at normal speed. Crew communicates with the flagger before following crossing, receive the confirmation of the warnings being provided with one or more equipped flaggers who are able to provide warning in all directions when approaching traffic, and then proceed over the crossing at normal speed without the stopping. No, an equipped flagger is a person other than a crew member who is equipped with the orange vest, orange shirt, orange jacket, night vest, shirt. The jacket must be fluorescent. Flagger must have the red flag, stop paddle by day and light at night. When invited with the train dispatcher, proper authority of the automatic warning device for the prepared with the return service, these restrictions no longer apply. Whistle for the crossing, notified with the automatic warning device for the malfunction sound whistle signal regardless of any of the prohibition. Provide warning adjacent traffic the practical position of the employee with the ground to work the traffic begins for the movements approaching the adjacent traffic under either the following condition of the train cutout cars are parted close within 250 feet of the road crossing, head end of the train stop close within 250 feet of the road crossing, clearance of the crossing of the signal circle to leave the car's engine, the equipment clear of the road crossing, the crossing signal circle that provide avoid leaving the car's engine, the equipment standing closer than 250 feet from the road crossing when there's an adjacent track. Accuting automatic warning device unnecessary. Avoiding accuting automatic warning device unnecessary. Leaving the switch open with the permitting equipment to stand with the control circuit if it cannot be avoided with the signals are equipped for manual operation. Crew member must be manually operated with the signal for the movement of the traffic. The crew member must restore the signal to automatic operation before the train or engine occupied with the crossing before it leaves the crossing. Blood blocking in public crossing when practical. Standing in the train switching movement it must be avoided blocking with the public crossing longer than 10 minutes. 7. Switching.